Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like this episode with structure, because at first I wasn't really sure where the story was going to go, because the fact is we got introduced to Jake first, then we found out about, first it was Adam, the astronaut, then we found out about Jake, then we had Gabriella and Jamila, and I was like, okay, so where is this all going? And then we kind of see slowly, but it reveals that like everyone's scattered, which I feel like that never really happens. Obviously, the Doctor and the companions are typically together. I feel like this is the first time in this series where they've ever really had like the companions and the Doctor kind of separate. They've done that like obviously before, even last episode they were kind of separated, but it's just so interesting because we have Ryan in Peru, Graham and Yaz are in Hong Kong, and then you have the Doctor in Madagascar. So many different interesting things. Gabriella's partner, because apparently they're kind of like famous. I guess they like two girls travel. I forgot what they were saying the title was, and she was like, "Oh, don't you know who we are? Oh, you must know who we are." It's like, "Yeah, I'm that Gabriella." And Ryan's like, "What?" She's like, "You don't know?" It's like, "Yeah, you know." I mean, to be fair, they've been off like running around, stuff, and they haven't been back home long enough, I guess, to check stuff out. I also love that she's like checking Ryan for stuff, and she feels his chest, and he's like, "Oh, you exercise a lot. You're in pretty good shape." He's like, "Yeah, I'm often running." I'm like, "Yeah, rolling with the Doctor. Your cardio must be amazing. All the running you have to do." But because Jamila wakes up, Gabriella wakes up and Jamila's gone. The place they went to was surrounded by trash at first, and they're like, this is supposed to be a beautiful spot like 3 years ago, but it's changed. But then like it's these dying birds, and it's like, okay, so what's going on? Then we go to Hong Kong, because that's where Jake ended up going, because he got a message from Adam being like, "Come help me." But I love that, because apparently, like, he's on sabbatical from being a cop or whatever. Like, we never actually find out what the circumstances were that actually led to him being on sabbatical. But regardless, it's kind of like, him and Graham and Yaz end up investigating. And I love that whole situation of each one trying to figure out why the other one was there, because Adam's like, "Oh, I'm here because I'm the only one that's looking for this particular astronaut." But Yaz and Graham didn't come here because they didn't know Adam was missing. They came here because they were tracking some energy source. At the same time, the Doctor is in Madagascar. She runs into Aramu and Suki, and they end up pulling a guy out of the ocean, but it seems like he was on this submarine, but it seems like he's infected with something, and it covers his entire body, and then he explodes. Interesting enough, the way he looked kind of reminds, because I'm not that well versed in the show because I've only seen some of it, but it kind of reminds me of that dude from Channel Zero, the monsters, at least from like maybe the first season. They look like their bodies were made out of teeth or something like that. It kind of reminds me of those creatures. Like, that's what that situation reminded me of. But his body explodes and turns into dust. I was like, Jesus, that's brutal. And so it becomes a situation where we start connecting everything, because it seems like everything is legitimately connected, from the dead birds and Jamila being missing, because Ryan and Gabriella go to the hospital that, it's like, oh, like she got dropped off there, and they find her and she's infected. Sadly, there's no saving her, because I think at that point she was already dead, but I think it was just like the residuals of like what was kind of happening to her body afterwards. It was just kind of like reflexes. And so obviously they end up rescuing Adam. As Graham and Adam do. Then there's these people in kind of almost like these hazmat suits that are attacking them. Luckily, they were able to get away. But I love that whole conversation where it's just like Jake is talking about the fact that he's on a sabbatical. And, Grandma's like, "Oh, no, don't worry. She is too," talking about Yaz. And Yaz is like, "Yeah, but at least I'm not the one going around saying that I'm a cop." Also, it was pretty badass Jake kind of getting into action, kicking that one dude, blasting him, and then blasting the other person. I guess it's kind of, you were kind of in danger at the time, so the doc didn't really have too much to say. And normally she doesn't like violence and stuff like that, but I guess it's just depending on the circumstances. It's kind of, it was a life and death situation. I guess, it depends on, the circumstances. There might be a deeper thing behind that. Well, the fact is the Doctor is willing to kind of let that. So I didn't really kind of give Jake the this typical, like, she doesn't like weapons type of situation. I mean, it ended up getting left behind anyway, but still. But like I said, I do like that basically all the different storylines at this point are converging, because literally everything that's going down in each of those 3 areas is literally all connected. So Adam, is sick, and it seems like what's happening and what ended up ultimately killing everyone else is killing him. Because the sad situation is, especially for Adam and Jake, because Jake and Adam are married, but they have a very complicated relationship, because Jake is never kind of willing to kind of step out of, just kind of step out of his comfort zone a little bit. And he ends up talking about later on, it's like, Adam knew what kind of person he was marrying. The fact of the matter is, he's not really big into, travel. He's not big in kind of like talking about his emotions and stuff like that. But it was actually kind of sad when we actually break it down. The reason why, because he feels like Adam wasn't telling, is it truthful? And it's like, why is that? Adam is so amazing and awesome, because he even brought up, like, how do you know what it's like being married to someone so like awesome like Adam is? And you can see it in Graham, so he doesn't say anything, but it makes him think of Grace. It's like, especially because of their relationship, she was the nurse that took care of him, when he was sick, so it adds that element to it as well. But for Jake, he thought, like, Adam's so amazing and great, like, there's no way he could love me the way I love him, And it was kind of sad to know that that's kind of part of the insecurity, but it's that thing of, like, you kind of take, your relationships and those moments for granted, and now he's kind of realizing that, he wasn't there when, to be there on such a monumentous occasion like Adam being launched into space, he wasn't there for that. So obviously that made, Adam feel a certain way. I love Ryan being like, because obviously the doctor's like, oh, if I can get one of those birds to study. And Ryan's like, well, it's a good thing I got one of those birds. And she's like, oh, so that's why you smell like dead bird. I thought you changed your shampoo or something. And then there was that moment later on where Ryan was like, what's a pathogen? And Graham's like, oh, thank you for asking, because I didn't want to seem like an idiot. Because what's interesting is that basically it turns out that this whole thing is some alien infection, almost like it's an alien virus that's spreading. Because it turns out the reason why these birds are dying is because it's apparently this pathogen it is virus infection is attaching to plastic, which the birds are sadly eating, and obviously they're spreading it to humans. But it's kind of like, well, why is it manifesting itself in humans? Humans aren't plastic. But then you really think about it, it's like, well, then the fact of the matter is so much of the water is like filtered and stuff like that to get rid of, like, plastic and stuff like that, but there's still micro traces amount of it in every bit. So all the food, all the drinks that we consume has it in it. So making us kind of like the perfect test tube for these things to kind of fully grow. So that's why the infections are infecting humans as well. Starting with the birds who are attacking humans, but then spreading it to humans like that, which is kind of scary to know that this is kind of, obviously starting on so small of scale, but obviously it's going to grow. I mean, obviously it's grown enough because it's literally affecting 3 different continents, so. At the same time, you had Gabriella going with Yaz, and, it's kind of interesting because the fact of the matter is Gabriella's just kind of like, are you crazy? I'll also love it once again. Gabriella's like, oh, so you must know who I am. It's like, no. And she's like, what? You literally haven't heard, like, the video, the travel vlog that we do? Come on, what is up with you guys? It's like, well, they do a lot of traveling themselves. But the fact of the matter is Yaz and Gabriella end up teleporting onto what they believe to be the alien ship, which I love later on. I'm skipping around. They find out it's not an alien planet or whatever. And Yaz kind of looks a little bummed. And Ryan's like, what's up with you? She's like, I thought I discovered an alien planet by myself. It's like, oh, that's sad. That, like, I get it. Because you're like, yeah. Because normally it's like any planet they go to, it's because the doctor kind of introduces them to it and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, I thought I discovered a planet on my own. Turns out, no, we're still on Earth. We're just underneath the Indian Ocean, which Gabriella's like, oh my god, we're underneath the ocean. But it's kind of that thing, I guess. It's like when you've kind of done all that traveling with the doctor, you kind of want some accomplishments of your own and not have your accomplishments tied to the doctor. So you kind of feel for Yaz in that moment. You know what's also super sad? Aramu's death. It was almost just kind of like, oh, it happened and we never went back to that. What I'm also wondering, was Aramu just a normal person? Well, because, we get the reveal that Suki isn't, for one, she's not from this planet. 2, she's connected to those people in the hazmat suit. So I was thinking, like, wait, are they actually humans? And the fact of the matter is this is some, like, experiment that went wrong. But then, like, 3, she talks about the fact is of, like, oh no, like, yeah, you helped solve this, like, this lab and everything. I couldn't figure out on my own, because like the doctor was enjoying like having Suki on her side, because it's like, oh my god, you're so smart. And even Suki being like, oh wow, doc, you picked this stuff up pretty quickly. She's like, yeah, I know. So, but the point I was trying to make is we see that she was kind of connected to all of this. It makes you wonder, was Aramu as well, or was he just some random dude that kind of, we never actually knew what their relationship was. I like to assume, well, I'm going to assume that he was just part of this, because like I said, it was just like he ended up getting attacked by the birds and died, and we just kind of moved on. It might even just been he was some regular person. I just kind of felt bad. I was like, oh, that just kind of sucks. Like, you died, no one came out because no one knew that you were dead, but by the time they would have found out, they were also running for their lives. So it's just kind of like, oh, that sucks. But it was really interesting actually finding out where this all actually stemmed from, because it turns out technically it started with Suki, because basically her entire world was attacked by this virus called Praxeus. But the fact of the matter is, they were different scientist groups sent out across, space and everything to find a means of curing it. But obviously, Earth being what it is, kind of like the big agglomeration of trash. They're like so much plastic and stuff like that. I think the doctor was talking about there being like 5 specific spots like around the world where that kind of happens. What's happening there in the ocean, apparently, like that happens at least in 4 other spots, I think she was saying. So it's a situation of, that's where this Praxis gets to like fester and grow. And obviously the birds go to those spots going for plastic out of the water and getting infected, hence spreading it. Kind of reminded me of something out of, I'm not that well versed in the movie, but the Hitchcock movie, The Bird. It makes you wonder if that's kind of what that's supposed to be inspired by. Once again, I'm not that familiar. I'm not that, only Hitchcock movie I'm familiar with is Psycho, just because that's obviously been like adapted over and over again, like remade and redone over and over again. But regardless, like I said, I'm going on a tangent and stuff like that, but that's what it kind of immediately reminded me of. But the sad thing is, like, Suki, she actually kind of brought the infection here, because it's like they were searching all these different planets. Earth was the perfect test tube because of all the stuff, and it's like, holy crap, you brought this to its planet. It's one thing, it sucks that you and your people were dying from this and you're trying to find a cure. That's great, but the fact is, you literally infect another planet, particularly going to lead to another planet, a species being wiped out just to save your own. That's kind of messed up. Because they did find a cure and did test it on Adam, because Adam suggested, it's like, well, you need a human being, you need a person to test it on. And obviously, Jake was reluctant, like, no. But Adam was like, for one, he doesn't have that much time. And it's like, if they don't do anything, he's going to die anyway. So it's like, we have to take advantage of this. I did like that moment he had, Jake and Adam, where it's just kind of like, stop dodging life, because it's kind of like you haven't really been living life, which I can totally get. Like, I'm a lot like a Jake. I don't get out much. I don't really just, I internalize a lot of stuff, so I don't really wear my heart on my sleeve type of situation, even though I do. It's a whole thing. But I could understand that, and I just thought, it sucks, because it's like, it's like, they were kind of, at least Adam was mad at, Jake and all this time, because even Jake kept being like, you act like I don't care. I literally came like halfway across the world to find you, to save you on my own, which, I think that should be commended. But luckily, when it was all said and done, the cure did work on Jake. Sad thing is, Suki tried, she had, sent out a message to her people about it, and also used it on herself, which sadly, it doesn't work on her, because we never found out what species she is, but she's from a different world, and so her biology is very different. There's also this interesting thing where it's just like, the doctor's like, oh, brains, come on, think. And then Grandma's like, did she say brains as in plural? No one else brought that up, and even I caught it when I was like, wait, do Gallifreyans have 2 brains? It's like, no, maybe? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Because obviously the 2 hearts thing has always been a thing, but are they adding in little tidbits of like, oh yeah, Gallifreyans have double up on other organs as well? I don't know. Or maybe it's just, maybe she meant that in a situation of put mind together, but everyone else is, because obviously the doctor can kind of get lost and just kind of like get steps ahead of everyone rather than telling, because even Adam, she was like, okay, see, this is potentially something to help you. He was like, ow. She's like, I told you it was going to hurt. He's like, no, you didn't. She's like, well, I meant to. The doctor can kind of get ahead of herself sometimes in that regard. So I'm wondering if that was me. It's supposed to be brains as in all of us, like, putting our brains together, or was she legitimately being, maybe that's come up before, I don't remember. Like I said, the two hearts thing is the one that always comes up. Like, I never remember, I don't think they've ever mentioned any other organ or anything in Gallifreyans, being more than one, being different than a normal humans. Obviously, the biology, it's definitely going to be different on some level, but in that extent of just like the number of like organs and stuff like that, heart seems to be the only thing that's ever really come up. But regardless, and the sad thing, we never found out either, but like I said, because it sounded, because Suki had said like she had sent it out to her people, but it's like, so whoever was making that cure, they might have potentially ended up dying as well. So that might have been lost of her race, which is kind of like the implications there are even sadder. But when it was all said and done, the doctor is trying to like get Suki to, like, okay, here's a way to get your ship up and running. It's like, together, your mind and mine, we can make this happen. We can find a cure for this planet. But it's like, it was already too late, which is kind of a bummer. But at the same time, it is kind of a little sucky because it's like, well, all this kind of started because of Suki. I mean, to be fair, they came to this planet because they were going to spread it. They were going to test it out, sure. And it might have, because that's why all these people, whether it be what happened to Adam or Jamila, was using them as test subjects, because using them as test tubes to kind of test it out themselves to see what will work and what wouldn't. So it's not like they were the best of people, but it's still kind of sucky and sad. Like I said, especially if it means like the rest of her people tried out the cure. Maybe some people did, but kind of found like, oh, it doesn't work. So there's still potentially her people might still be out there in the universe trying to find a cure for this, or maybe they were able to take what she did, realize it wouldn't fit their biology, or maybe they tested on a few people and then found out they wouldn't work with their biology and then adjusted, So, but regardless, the crew ends up working together. The Doc and the team end up working together to get her Suki's ship back together, and they're going to use it as a way of kind of spreading the cure once it gets to the atmosphere. I even love Jake being like, oh, wait, these up, down, left, and right. Oh, that's all there is to like flying the ship? Adam, your job is the easiest thing in the world. And so they want to set it to autopilot, but unfortunately they can't. So Jake stays behind and does it, because for him it's like, this is something I've got to do, So I was like, oh man, don't, like, dude, you and Jake and Adam are at a better spot at the very least. So you're hoping that, but it's like the ship is breaking down while also spreading out the cure and everything. It's like, oh dude, come on. But then, the Doc works her magic and is able to teleport him back into the ship. It's like, oh, you did it, Doc. And she's like, yeah, I'm a bit of a romantic. I'm like, yeah, I'm a sucker for a good love story too, Doc. I feel weird when I just refer to the Doctor as Doctor, as Doc. Then Doctor as Doctor. Sorry, I'm legitimately all over the place in this recording, so I do apologize. So, at the end of the day, they were able to, save the entire planet and kind of, get rid of Praxeus. And I love Jake being like, yeah, that's the problem with saving the world. Literally, no one's ever going to know. But I think it's interesting because this trio, because that's always the thing. Sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't. Like people that the Doctor has crossed paths with, sometimes they'll pop up later on. Typically not if they're companions, but you never know. It's like, hey, there's somewhere out there in this continuity, like, hey, we did something awesome. More so than anything, Jake and Adam are just going to take this time, to travel the world. Obviously, Gabriella's coming along. And it's like, it's not much of a honeymoon, if you're tagging along as well. But she's like, oh, we can vlog it and stuff like that. It's like, well, what was it? Ryan called it like the 3 idiots or something like that, which I think is kind of funny because literally an entire episode, not just them, but even Ryan and Graham being like, wait, what? What does that mean? All right, Doc, So I love that because that's the problem with the Doc being kind of the smartest person in the room. Like, stuff she says ends up going over people's head. But, I thought that is interesting. Especially because it kind of coincides with what the Doctor was saying, that, like, obviously being on this planet, there's 7 billion people from, like, the depths of the ocean to the atmosphere, and it's, like, literally 3 different people that were in 3 different situations / continents, one in Peru, Adam was in Hong Kong, this also connects to Madagascar, so it's just so interesting that, like, the circumstances brought all these different people together, so obviously, there being a larger message behind this episode of like, yeah, let's be more careful about, taking care of the planet. But even at the same time, I did like the Doctor was saying, because obviously the planet kind of does kind of fend for itself because planet is a giant body, and much like a human body, the planet basically has antibodies that kind of fight back against stuff like that. I forgot what she was saying specifically that was kind of referencing like the Earth kind of handling certain things, because apparently like it was I think it was like the Praxeus was breaking down in like the crows anyway or whatever. So it's like the planet was already fighting. I guess that's where the atmosphere comes into place. Like the cure they were making plus adding it to the atmosphere to kind of spread it all across was kind of like a 1-2 punch against Praxeus. But nevertheless, some very interesting developments. I'm curious to see, ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.